Let's get started on Chapter 3, percents. We're going to cover 5 sections. 3.1, writing decimals and fractions as a percents. 3.2, finding part. 3.3, finding base. 3.4, finding rate. And 3.5, increase and decrease problems. Okay, 3.1, writing decimals and fractions as percents. The book describes how fractions and decimals are very similar. Percents represent parts of a whole, just like a fraction does. However, percents are really looking at parts of a whole out of 100. So we're taking a whole amount and saying, well, that whole amount, whatever it is equal to 100%. And then if we have anything less than 100%, then we have a part. So as an example here, 12% equals 12 out of 100 parts, equal parts, 12 out of 100 equal parts. If I were to write that in a fraction form, it would be 12 over 100. And in a decimal form, it would be 0.12 or 12 hundredths. 25% is 25 over 100 or 0.25. That's also written or read as 25 hundredths. 100% is 100 over 100, which is 1. And 150% is 150 over 100 or 150 hundredths, which is equal to 1.5. Okay, so the first thing we're going to review, most of you have been exposed to this at some point in time in your lives, converting a decimal number to a percent, a decimal to a percent. So we start off with a decimal of 0.75, and that will then lead us to 75%. They are equal. They are equal, they are congruent. And how do we do that? We slide the decimal to the right 2 times. So boop, boop, slide the decimal over twice, and that results in 75, which is 75%. So you can convert those relatively easy. The only thing that might be tricky is if you have 275%, if you have 2.75, you'd slide to the right 2 times, which leaves you 275%. There's some examples here. You could practice on writing decimals in the form of percents. Same thing if we have 0.1. 0.1 is going to be 2 decimal points over to the right, and that would lead us to 10% as an example. Write the decimals as percents. You can go on and continue on. Okay, example number 4. A marketing manager is given the following data in fraction form and must convert the data to percents. Well, this is going to require us to take 2 steps. 2 steps, because first, which we learned in a previous chapter, we're going to first take the fraction and convert it to a decimal form. Okay, first take the fraction and convert it to a decimal form. And the way we do that is we have 1 over 4. If you remember 1 over 4, that's like saying 1 divided by 4, which means 4 goes into 1. So if we solve for 4 goes into 1, so 4 divided into 1, we're going to remember that the decimal point goes here to the right because it's 1. 1 is 1 point, so 1 with the decimal point. 4 can't go into 1, but 4, if we add a 0 here, so that now 4 goes into 10 now, that is possible. 4 goes into 10 2 times. 2 times 4 is 8. We're then going to subtract 8 from 10, or 10 minus 8, and that's going to give us 2. And we're going to continue this down so that we have a 0 here. Bring the 0 down here. 4 goes into 20 5 times. 5 times 4 is 20, and then 20 minus 20 is 0. So the result is 0.25. 0.25 is our answer. 0.25 is 25 hundredths. When we write out 2500s, we slide the decimal to the right 2 times. That means we're going to end up with 25. And that in the form of a percent is 25%. So getting back to the original question, 1/4 is equal to 25%. You can do the other two examples. Okay, it may be that we have to go in the opposite direction. In other words, we're going to have a percent, and we want to convert that to a decimal. So if we go from a decimal to a percent, sliding the decimal point 2 times to the right, well, if we're going the opposite direction, we'll slide the decimal point to the left 2 times. So 35%, we'll move the decimal over twice, and that really results in 0.35. 50%, moving the decimal point twice, 0.5. I think you got the gist of it. You can look through the examples there. Okay, where it gets a little trickier, not a ton, a little trickier. We have a fraction that's a percent. In other words, it's not even 1%, it's 1/5 of a percent. So we have to remember that 1/5 of a percent is less than 1, or 3/4 of a percent, or 5/8 of a percent. So we can kind of just keep the percentage sign off to the right for a moment and say, well, what is 1/5? 1/5, if we run the numbers on the 1/5, 1 divided by 5 is going to give us 0.2. Well, that's just the 1/5 here. So 1/5 is 0.2, 0.2%. 0.2% is what we have. That's less than 1%. Less than 1%. Now, if we want to convert that 0.2% to a decimal, we have to do exactly what we've done before. We're going to slide the decimal point 2 times to the left. So the result is going to be 0.002. 3/4 of a percent, 3/4, just focus on the 3/4, that's 0.75. And then now that we've got the 3/4, we'll just add the percent sign. 0.75%, or 3/4 of a percent, that's less than 1%. It's not even 1%. So therefore, when we convert this over to a decimal, same thing, we'll slide it to the left 2 times, and we end up with 0.0075. You can figure the next one. Looks like at the bottom of section 1, you have a chart that shows you the common conversions between fraction, decimal, percents, and equivalents. So you can use that as a reference point.